I had transferred to Johnston High School in East Austin as a junior in high school, and I was very nervous. But the very first day of class, my English teacher said to me, "I know you're going to do great in my class." I don't know how she knew that by looking at me, but it worked. Pat Brookie became my favorite teacher because she helped me navigate a new social environment. She wasn't afraid to say that she cared about me and she expected great things from me. What kind of things? Well, she challenged me to participate in a debate, even though my only debate experience had been arguing with my parents at dinner time. The first debate, which was televised, by the way, was a complete disaster. I debated a state champion, and he wiped the floor with me. So Ms. Brookie said to me, "That was rough, but you would do great if you were in my debate class." So I joined up. I learned to speak with public with an air of confidence. So by the time the Wheel of Fortune opportunity came about, I was ready. Mrs. Brookie also taught me 11th grade English, where we read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. More on that later. But Pat Brookie was my mentor. Mentors are those people whose shoulders you stand upon. They see further and see the possibilities that you can't see. How many of us feel imposter syndrome at times? Almost every hand is up, yes. Well, having someone who has a different vantage point can help us believe that we can really do it. So mentoring, probably a topic you've heard a lot about, probably since you started being a professional in every field you're in. Get a mentor. Who's your mentor? Be a mentor. Well, as someone who's studied mentorship and looks at issues under the larger umbrella of developmental relationships, let me give you a definition. Mentorship is a relationship with a more experienced person who assists you in work and career tasks, as well as what organizational theorist Kathy Cram calls psychosocial. That means both you as a whole person and a human being. There are other kinds of developmental relationships, such as sponsorship, coaching, advising. But today I want to focus on what I call the platinum package, which is mentoring. Mrs. Brookie helped me unpack what is called the hidden curriculum. Now, every organization has rules and customs that aren't written down that quickly determines who's an insider and who's an outsider. In fact, a lot of our humor is based on people not knowing these invisible rules. But in professional settings, it's not quite as funny. Not knowing where to sit in a meeting or what casual Friday looks like means that a talented team member can be overlooked and opportunities for advancement can be missed. This is tragic for the individual and the organization because you want to benefit from everybody's talents. And a mentor can be the one to help you understand and clarify the things that you don't know that you need to know. So let me share another example of where I could have used a mentor to explain the hidden curriculum. When I was a first-year student at UT, I had a class in Garrison Lecture Hall, just over there. It was a great class, but it was 90 minutes of lecture. And one day I was thirsty, summertime, and had a 44-ounce big gulp before class. And as you might expect, about the middle of class, I needed a bio break. So big dilemma here. What does one do where you're in the middle of a college classroom and you have to pee? I waited, and I got to a point where I couldn't wait anymore. And so I finally raised my hand, and the professor recognized me, no doubt expecting an erudite, thoughtful elocution. "Yes, what is it?" "May I be excused to go to the restroom?" She gave me a look like you give a look to a kid who ate dirt. And it's funny today, but as a first-generation college student from an inner-city school, we didn't just walk out of classrooms. But that's an example of something that you may not know and you may not find out without a mentor. I often get asked, how does one find a mentor? And often people say they want a mentor like them. We call this homophily. Seeking out a homophilous mentor, someone who is like you on the axis of identity, such as race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or faith, is a pretty common touch point. But in many environments, this is difficult. If you're from an underrepresented community, you might be most in need of mentoring, which means a homophilous mentor may be hard to find. Additionally, there's something called cultural taxation. People who have come from marginalized identities might serve as mentors, often have invisible expectations and hidden work. So given the challenges finding homophilous mentors and cultural taxation, what does this mean for someone seeking a mentor? Let me first note that mentoring is not one-way and transactional. They should be reciprocal and transformational. In other words, a mentoring relationship should be a benefit to both people where you gain knowledge, experience, and wisdom. I discovered this when I researched faculty mentors of undergraduate students. Many times during interviews, they would lean into me and say, I'm getting as much, if not more, than my mentee is in this relationship. Is that okay? Am I doing this right? And I'd say, it sounds like you have a rewarding, reciprocal relationship with your mentee. Please tell them how much you mean to them. In my research, I investigated what mentors from different identity groups, particularly race and gender, what made them effective in mentoring Black students. What I found is a concept called proximal experiences of being othered, which means I learned that these mentors experience marginalization, sometimes directly in the form of things like anti-Semitism, sexism, homophobia, or are very close to somebody who had. These experiences led them to build empathy with the experiences of being the only one in an organizational setting. They did not say that their experiences of marginality were the same as their mentees. Instead, they viewed their experience and their role as listening and watching for how they could assist their mentees survive and thrive in an environment where they were often alone. So I'll bet everyone in this room can relate to a proximal experience of being othered. We've all had a first day at a new job or a new school where we feel discomfort, right? So when a new person comes on the scene, you have an experience that can help connect them. Their challenges may differ from yours, but there is a connection between your first day and their current experience. Such an approach requires empathy, understanding, listening, and humility. These people built trust with their mentees, so they felt comfortable discussing their discomfort. They also realized there were times that they would need to be outsourcing the ability to understand the experience because they hadn't personally experienced those things. And they used their networks to connect their mentees to friends with homophilous identities. One example is a friend of mine who was mentoring someone of a different race and gender. The friend reached out and says, I haven't had the same experiences that you have had navigating race in the academy. And because you've written about these issues as a Black man in academia, I wondered if you'd be part of a conversation about the things you've experienced. We had a three-way conversation, and not only did my friend provide his mentee with a resource and a sounding board, but he also joined us to listen and learn about what it meant to be successful in the spaces as Black people. You see, mentoring isn't simply about sharing what you know. It's also sharing who you know and being a constant learner. It also means you appreciate what it means to be part of a mentoring ecosystem when you are both a mentor and a mentee at the same time. And I firmly believe that having both roles means you are thinking reciprocally, which makes you better at both giving and receiving advice. And you're able to contribute to what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called a beloved community, where there's mutuality and support for everyone. I've said a lot about mentors. Let's talk about mentees. Those of you who are mentees or proteges, did you ever get advice about how to best leverage your mentoring relationship? No, probably not. So as I continue to conduct research on mentoring, I realized that there were few resources to help junior partners to access the power of mentorship. With my graduate student, Laura Struve, we wrote a white paper and called the concept of empowering mentees to use mentoring relationships effectively mentorability, like how you might consider an elite athlete coachable. I also gave a talk on a conference on mentorability, and one of the attendees was Victoria Black, who became my student and mentee. Her extension of mentorability research led to a TEDx talk on mentorability called "No One is Talking to the Mentees," which has been viewed more than 35,000 times. You should watch it after today's conference. So my TEDx talk on mentoring in itself is a good example of reciprocity in mentoring. My mentee gave a TED talk, and now I'm following in her footsteps. I also want to make a point that mentoring relationships can transform. Sometimes they end naturally because the goal is accomplished, you change work settings, or you naturally fall out of touch. Sometimes they end because they should. There's a violation of trust, there's exploitation, but sometimes they turn into friendships because the junior person becomes closer in experience. A lot of times people say to me, a mentor has done so much for me, I want to pay them back. But remember earlier we said that reciprocity and mentorship matters. If you're in a healthy relationship, you've done as much for your mentee or mentor as they've done for you. So I would just suggest paying it forward. Share your experience and wisdom with someone trying to accomplish the same things you have done. In your own mentoring relationships, whether you're the senior or the junior person, seek the power of homophily in the relationship, but also realize that mentors and mentees, the relationships across difference are powerful. You can share networks and also position yourself to learn more about your mentor or mentee and how they experience the world. So, back to my Wheel of Fortune debate 11th grade English teacher and mentor, Pat Brookie. She's retired and living in Portland. We got together a few years ago, had German pancakes, very sweet, very nice, just like we used to do many years ago when we were doing debate tournaments. When I teach a class here at UT, I remember how much an encouraging word or even a challenge to a student who could become a mentee can make a difference. But there's a reason why her mentorship across the lines of gender, race, and experience resonates so powerfully in my life. You see, Pat Brookie coached Lincoln Douglas in cross-examination debate. Lincoln Douglas is solo, and cross-examination is partner debate. I'm pretty sure she suggested that I do cross-examination and paired me up with a new student who was also new to debate. And she was a really great partner, and we won tournaments, we did great. In fact, it was such a great partnership that we've been married for over 25 years. And we have 2 kids, right over there. So you can see how extraordinary of a mentor Pat Brookie had been for me. And while I don't think my mentoring has resulted in any weddings yet, you never know. So despite, and sometimes because of our differences, mentoring across diverse identities can be impactful and life-changing. Reciprocal, respectful relationships have the potential to change your life trajectory and may even result in lifelong, enriching relationships. Thank you.